Everyone, and welcome to the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors meeting. Today's Tuesday, June 11th. Just came out of closed session. We're going to start today with taking the roll.
Supervisor Howard?
Present.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Here.
Chair Cowan?
Here.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Here.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Here.
Great. At this time, let's take a moment of reflection. Supervisor Howard, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Supervisor. Is there any new employees? We have introduction of new employees to the board. Seeing none. Is there any reportable action out of closed session today,
No
Council?
reportable action.
Great. At this time, I'm going to request any deletions, corrections, or additions from other board members to the agenda. Do we have anything at this time, gentlemen? Nothing? Great. So we're going to start off with reports. Supervisor Berkowitz, you want to start off?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Since my last meeting, I attended the Progressive Mixer hosted by the UROC Economic Development Corporation with assistance by the Crescent City Del Norte Chamber of Commerce. With a bus tour provided by Redwood Transit, we visited the Trees of Mystery, Woodland Villa, the Steelhead Lodge, the historic Requa Inn, Redwood Hotel Casino, and Klamath Jet Boat Tours. We had an enjoyable time and even had appetizers at each stop. The next day, at a regular Chamber of Commerce meeting, we learned that our Executive Director, Sarah Caron, and the Assistant Director, Kyle Clausen, were both leaving their positions, but would stay until after the 4th of July activities, and we will miss them both. Last week, Supervisor Gitlin and I attended the LAFCO meeting where we approved the budget for next year. Supervisor Hemmingson and I attended the Future Facilities Committee meeting where we heard a presentation from Aircon Energy and listened to former Supervisor McClure talk about the need for replacement of the Battery Point Lighthouse handrails. Several other items were also considered for future funding. Last weekend, I attended the annual health fair, which was well attended. I was even able to obtain some of the delicious caramel milk provided by Alexander Derry and Supervisor Howard. Thank you very much, Supervisor. Lastly, I want to say that I'm extremely disappointed that there will be no porta potties at South Beach during the 4th of July. This is no fault of any action by our Board of Supervisors, but it is because Caltrans failed to provide permission for porta potties until after the people have gone home after the 4th of July. Caltrans was asked to provide permission to have those porta potties some 3 months ago, and yet waited until after the deadline to provide possible permission. Each year, visitors brave risking their lives to race across busy Highway 101 in order to relieve themselves near South Beach. When they do so, they're doing it on Caltrans property on the east side of Highway 101, causing a health hazard which Caltrans refuses to mitigate. When a person gets injured crossing Highway 101 at South Beach, I personally will lay the fault directly at Caltrans' door because of their failure to act on our simple request that then they will be the cause and will have no one to blame but themselves. Madam Chairman, that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Supervisor Berkowitz. Supervisor Howard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Supervisor Hemmingson and I met with a small group of staff to discuss some follow-up on the Klamath Dam removals and potential mitigation that we would be seeking as part of that removal. As you're aware, we've had several discussions with this in front of the board and the public, and the group has reconnected with the county to try to follow up on some areas that is of strong interest to the county, more specifically sedimentation within the harbor, possible sedimentation and issues with our boat ramps on the Klamath River, and then also impacts to the sports fishing and commercial fishing seasons associated with those dam removals. We have yet to come up with next steps, but we are working diligently with staff to try to get to some agreement before the removals take place. Also attended at the request of California Department of Fish and Wildlife, a gray wolf stakeholders meeting that wasn't really for stakeholders. It was more of an update on where they've been in the last 2 years since their last meeting. This was in Reading last week. I found it actually quite interesting, not only because I'm a biologist, but also because the gray wolf, having been here now for 4+ years, has established itself quite well in the state of California, of the critters that we're aware of. They're consistently following collared animals that were collared by the state of Oregon within the state of California. There's very few of our own collared animals here, and we generally monitor those packs, which there's 2 current packs. One's called the Shasta pack, one's called the Lassen pack. They monitor the populations in those packs, plus through trail camera footage and other means of tracking these animals to determine their whereabouts over time. It's particularly interesting because the numbers have increased rather steadily, and right now they're aware through genetic samples of at least 20 confirmed individuals within the state, one of which spent some time in Del Norte County in December, January for a little while. We were not notified as well as we should have been by the department of this potential issue until after the collared animal had left us. But that OR 44, which was that animal, had returned into Oregon, and the department then reached out to CAO Serena to let them know that is what occurred, and they also reached out to various members of the board. What's particularly interesting, and why the stakeholder groups were assembled, both stakeholders on the ranching side of things and then also on the more of the environmental side of things, is to try to come up with some agreement on how the human interactions, the livestock interactions are going to affect as the wolf begins to expand its range in the state of California and impact ways of life that have existed for 100+ years without the gray wolf in the environment. And what has become particularly important through studies that have taken place in Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Washington, and now in the state of California, is that similar impacts will occur. We're definitely going to see impacts on livestock. We know that not only from data from the other states, but also data collected here in the state of California, where through scat samples they've been able to determine through actually 104 samples that the impact on wildlife is there, and the impact on livestock is there, not only from the present in the scats of livestock, but close to 50+% of the biomass in those scat samples of the 104 samples is made up of livestock. So right now they're foraging and concentrating on deer more specifically, and livestock being the second main prey base in those current ranges of those packs. But what is of particular concern, both to the defenders of wildlife type folks and then also to the ranchers, is that how best to respond to that interaction with their current way of ranching. And there's no easy solution to that. The mitigation, or I should say the techniques that they're utilizing to push the animals out and put some fear into them to keep them away from their herds is extremely costly. But those costs are right now, a lot of them being borne by the environmental groups, which is awesome to see them stepping up and helping to help find ways to deter livestock, wolf interaction, and human interaction. But in essence, as these populations expand, what we do know that there's going to be a great deal of conflict, and it won't be handled the way that the cougars have been handled in the state of California, because obviously the cougar is not listed as an endangered species within the state. So that's the report. I'll continue paying attention to this, but I'd like to bring this issue to the board eventually, because one of the recommendations that came out of this is to push the state to ensure that at least every animal, because it's such a small population in the state of California, is collared and monitored. And both all the stakeholders are supporting that position at this point in time. Also coming to my attention was some issues that we're having with the Del Norte Fish and Game Commission. I've spoke to Zach Larson, who's the current chair. I've also talked with Jerry Hemmingson about this in hopes that we could follow up with various representatives of the Fish and Game Commission that feel that the board is not seeking their advice more often on matters of fish and wildlife within our community or other resource-based issues, hoping to address those fairly soon. Attended some stakeholder meetings with the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board in the Eel River area, Fortuna, this week. Also had some constituent calls specific to issues with Del Norte Ambulance and rates that they're charging. As Supervisor Berkowitz mentioned, attended the health fair and was able to meet a lot of our community and give away some milk, which is always a fun thing to do. Attended the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation dinner here at the Lucky 7 Casino this week. And also, we're currently planning on the 18th of this month, so next week, at the Gasky Fire Hall, a meeting on fire preparedness for the Gasky community. Everybody's welcome if they live in Gasky or not, but want to make sure folks are there. We'll have, besides the Gasky Fire Department there, we'll also have the Forest Service and CAL FIRE to have some discussions with community members on how best to prepare for the upcoming fire season. And lastly, I'll end with the passing of Gertrude Zatola. She's a great friend of mine, the family's good friends, and her flirtatious nature will be sorely missed, and her cookies will be sorely missed. And that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Gittleman.
Yes, thank you. Busy week. Our Redwood Coast Transit Authority met May 31st. And we've changed the date for the meetings. It will be the fourth Monday of each month, starting at 1:30, which will precede our LAFCO meeting. And members heard about the short range, our commissioners heard about the short range transportation plan for the next 5-year period. We continued the discussion on the system overflow, the mission statement, goals and transit needs, data collection, marketing and financial plans. There's also advertising in there, as you're noticing on the buses. The budget draft was discussed, and the proposed operating expenses revenue will be $1.472 million, and the operating expenses are anticipated to be $1.313 million, leaving a surplus of $158,000, which is always good news when you're talking about keeping within budget. LAFCO approved its budget of $89,000 and extended the working contract of Plan West. There's continued discussion and concern about the fire dispatch services and delivery of fire services in southern Del Norte County, and we're asking the Yurok tribe partners to please give us an update on their volunteer efforts to get more volunteers. And we have concerns that fire services are going to improve in that area, so it keeps the community safe. I was asked to assist in a marketing film touting Del Norte County last week and Crescent City, the expansion of the plans to develop the 37-unit Vision project, which is the condominiums of the old medical building, and also the 5-star hotel and golf course project in Smith River. I was very happy to participate in that marketing plan and giving them my opinions on that which they asked me about. There's a good deal of activity at the animal shelter these days, and they're very much in need of volunteers. And I say this because our probation department is here, and they know I've been nagging at them very much and about getting more probationers out there, and we are really doing a good job. We just need more of them. I'm addressing our probation chief out there. Lonnie, thank you very much for please ringing that bell. We're trying to do the good work out there, the animal shelter, on a very meager budget. They're short of volunteers, and anybody who's interested in helping out, we've got plenty of work walking dogs, and if you're a little more energetic and can help spread some of the wood chips around the trails, We need you, and we appreciate you going out there. Also, we attended the second workshop of the Front Street Revitalization Plan at the Cultural Center, brought by the city. Now, this is the second go-around for this grant. $13 million is the CDBG's Community Development Block Grant application. It is due July 15th. Very much appreciate the partnership with the Elk Valley Rancheria. Areas addressed in this new revitalization plan up and down Front Street will be safety concerns, innovative ideas, art and cultural touches there, and the infrastructure. So I'm going to ask our board to please send a letter of support for the city packet in this grant application, which is due July 15th. So if we can have this item agendized for our next meeting, June 25th, excuse me, to have a letter from the board supporting the $13 million CDBG grant, federal grant, in time for the city's application, that would be great. Governor Newsom has declared war on the Second Amendment. His campaign promise was vowed to raise the bar on gun control. This year alone, more than a dozen new laws have gone into effect in California, some previously vetoed by our former governor. I was approached by a number of citizens this past week, letting me know that at least 17 other counties have passed, and there are 8 more who have this on their agenda, a resolution in support of the Second Amendment. And I have it here, and basically it's the same item throughout the event, throughout the resolution process. This is not a new conversation, but apparently with the Newsom administration on some kind of a warpath in opposition to the Second Amendment, I think it is appropriate for this board to check in, and I would respectfully ask our board to go on record as supporting the Second Amendment. So, Madam Chairwoman, I appreciate your adding this to our agenda for the June 25th meeting, and I will give a copy of the resolution to Kylie. Finally, a note on the passing of Keith Jones of Crescent City. Most of you don't know that name, but he was a volunteer extraordinaire, true definition of the word public servant. A regular at our Take a Bite Out of Blight projects, Crescent City Lions Club member, Del Norte County Amateur Radio Club, Chetco Grange, Coast Guard Auxiliary, always on the cleanups for the July 3rd deck party, July 4th cleanups, a great saxophone player. He played at the, if you remember, at the Farmers Market. He had his own 15-member band, Dixieland band. The list goes on and on about this. So Keith was the very essence of the definition, selfless public service. Keith Jones and his dog, Marble, were killed in a head-on collision on Highway 199 near Grants Pass this past Thursday. He was 69. A celebration of life will be held Saturday, June 15th at the Veterans Hall. And that's my report.
Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much. I had quite a few whale entanglement conference calls the last couple of weeks, and these are not normally short conference calls. They usually last between 2 and 3 hours each. We're trying to reduce the risk of whale entangling in Dungeness crab gear, and we've come a long ways. We are dealing with risk assessments and gear innovations, all kinds of different things. So that's an ongoing thing. Had an RC&D meeting, which is a Resource Conservation and Development District meeting. Under the Resource Conservation and Development District, the 5-county Salmonid group does a considerable amount of work. They do some great projects, continually working on salmon barriers, and have had a lot of participation in after burn areas, going in and doing an assessment, those types of things. But we're having some budget concerns with that group. We always seem to be running a little bit short, but we've been doing that for at least the last 12 years that I've been on there, so I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, but we're looking for some support. I went to the Front Street public input meeting and presentation at Elk Valley Rancheria. Great participation there, and a great project. Looking forward to seeing the completion of that. As Supervisor Howard said, we had a Klamath Dam removal mitigation meeting. I won't go into that anymore. Had a North Deal meeting, which is a meeting with Caltrans that we do quarterly, and we go over the projects in District 1. Most of my concern is with things that are happening in Delaware County, but there are some issues throughout District 1 that impact us all. But the Delmark County issues, of course, last chance grade is always top priority on our list. In the southernmost wall that we had been down to one lane there for a bit of time last year is completed. They've got cameras set up now on that the live cameras that are set up now on last chance grade, not visible by the public yet, but that's coming shortly. Right now, Highway Patrol and Caltrans can monitor that live on camera. Our Dr. Fine Bridge project is still on target for replacement in 2022. 199, they've been doing an audit for a while now on accidents on 199 through its entirety, from the start at 101 to the state line, and they're seeing an increase in accidents that they can't really put their finger on because there's not one area. It's sporadic throughout the whole throughout the whole distance of that area on 199. And we had some discussion after the meeting, a couple of staff members and myself, about wondering if it has something to do with sporadic cell service and distracted driving. Oftentimes you'll be going through there and all of a sudden you'll be hearing your phone will be dinging off about getting text messages. So I personally don't do anything with text messages while I'm driving, but they're going to be looking at a lot of different things. So hopefully we'll find out what's going on there. Had a short meeting with Michael Howard from AECom, wanting to get some, along with Supervisor Cowan, wanting to get some information on last chance grade. They are going to be bidding on the project and wanted to get the perspective, from board members, but we don't really have a lot of information that's not public information to give, but did get a chance to meet him and talk with him. I did attend, as was mentioned by Supervisor Howard, I did attend Gertrude Zatola's services. What a great family. She'll be sorely missed. Had a No Place Like Home conference call with Senator McGuire, giving him an update on our progress. Had a future facilities meeting, as was mentioned earlier. And most importantly, I attended my grandson's preschool graduation, which that always gets me about having graduations throughout your school. You graduate from preschool and then you graduate from kindergarten, and it just goes on and on. But also, both my grandkids were in a recital at Crescent Elk, and that's always a great thing. And yesterday we had a tri-agency meeting And we're still working on some issues there, and changed our meeting dates to the fourth Thursday of every month at 3 to 4 p.m. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. For me, I met with Delphine over at Daily Bread Ministries. Been working with her closely for the last couple months, and things at the shelter are moving along with the intent of making it a year-round facility. Also been meeting with Heather regarding that as well, bringing their services over there so that we would have a year-round facility in our community. Had a mental health board meeting, or should I say behavioral health board meeting, where we went over the Mental Health Services Act update, ongoing community psychiatric recruitment, collaboration between United Indian Health and Behavioral Health, and other update on other recruitments within departments. Had agenda review, had a conversation in a meeting with the constituents regarding hemp, which then turned into a meeting with County Council and Joel regarding hemp. As Supervisor Hemmingson mentioned, met with Howard Michael from ECOM to discuss last chance grade. Had a conference call that Supervisor Hemmingson talked about with Senator McGuire's office, going over our homeless plan, long-term and short-term, and then had a meeting again on homeless yesterday. We've been meeting the faith-based groups along with nonprofits. Started meeting a couple months ago, focusing more on short-term solutions, what we can do right now with money that's coming down from the state. And you know, it's nice to see money, but I don't like it. It's not a lot, and it's very temporary. I think it's just a Band-Aid. I don't think the state is doing much to really look at the whole picture, but we do what we can. Met with a constituent yesterday regarding dumping that's been going on in the neighborhood, and that's about it for me. So let's move on. We have a consent agenda in front of us with items 1 through 15. Do we have any public comment?
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull item number 9 for a separate vote, please.
Okay, so item number 9 is being pulled from the consent agenda. And then we'll do public comment on the consent agenda. That's items 1 through 15. Any public comment?
Move to approve, Madam Chair.
I have a motion to approve consent agenda 1 through 15 minus number 9. Do I have a second? I'll second that. Kylie, can you please call the vote?
Supervisor Hemmingson,
Yes, I need to recuse myself on items number 4, 5, and 7. I have a conflict of interest.
okay. Supervisor Gitlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz,
Yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Chair Cowan.
Yes. You gonna do this? Okay, let's go on. Do you want to just take up item number 9 right now? Supervisor Hemmingson, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I just wanted a separate vote on this. Don't have a high confidence level in approving the ask, so I would just want to...
Okay, so this was on the last meeting. I asked to push it forward to this meeting so that Supervisor Berkowitz was here. This is asking for you to be a voting delegate on NACO for this year. You want to talk about that?
Sure
Do you
do.
want to explain what that means, what it entails?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate the chance to respond to Mr. Hemmingson's low confidence in me to serve as the delegate. So let's review. At the last meeting, I was gone over the Memorial Day weekend, and I had long-standing obligations at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, so I was not able to participate in the agenda item concerning my fitness to represent you as a delegate in the upcoming conference at NACO. So to evaluate whether I should continue to represent you on this board as your voting member at NACO, let's take a look at the record of what I accomplished as your representative at last year's NACO annual conference. As a voting member representing you, I voted to support legislation that counties, including ours, should be fully involved when the federal government is proposing new national monuments for their counties. I voted in favor of urging Congress to modify the Endangered Species Act of 1973 and bring counties to the table. I voted to urge Congress to enact federal legislation to require private entities that sell land to the federal government for conservation purposes to pay an annual fee to the affected counties. I voted on a resolution that calls on Congress to pass legislation allowing for the use of FEMA funding to be used in forest thinning and restoration activities. Now, each one of you received a written report, my written report of these activities when I returned from NACO. Now, just to refresh you on what my report entailed, here's a copy for each one of you of that report that I submitted to you after my conference at NACO. In addition to the votes that I took on behalf of this county, I also sat in on other sessions where I urged other delegates from non-rural counties to support the successor legislation that will support our local schools and counties that are suffering because the Secure Rural Schools and Communities legislation has not been renewed, causing our county and local schools to lose out on almost $1 million a year. At every meeting and caucus, I took the opportunity to mention the needs of our own last chance grade. When I took the assignment to be your representative to NACO last year, I knew that there would be many conference sessions that I would not be able to cover. So I asked my wife if she would help attend by making audio recordings of some of the most important meetings. She volunteered to do this for our county, so I paid for her registration fee, airfare, food, other expenses over $1,000 worth out of my own pocket, so that I could cover more presentations that affect our county. I did not ask for nor receive any compensation for her. At the last meeting, a supervisor asked why I did not attend the Western Interstate Regional Conference instead of NACO's annual conference. The answer is that while somewhat valuable, the WIR conference consists of just 15 Western states and has less of an impact that NACO does with all of its members from 50 states. Also last year, I made a commitment to this board that I would attend just one of the 3 yearly NACO conferences so that it would not have an additional impact on our budget. This is the same impact that in past years when David Finnegan represented our board, they had the same impact. At this year's NACO conference, I would be supporting the Forest Management for Rural Stability Act, which would make permanent the Secure Rural Schools program. I would also be supporting H.R. 3043, which would permanently authorize PILT and make the funding mandatory. So I would hope that you would consider my track record as representing this county last year and let me continue to represent you as your voting delegate this year. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Berkowitz. So do I have a motion to carry this forward?
I'll make that motion.
I'd like to say something first before you make the motion, Supervisor Berkowitz. You know, of all the issues that we have in Del Norte County, something like this comes up and it shows a really ugly side of what we do on this Board of Supervisors. I venture to say most of you out in this audience don't even know what NACO stands for, and if you do, you don't know what it does. But its impact on Del Norte County is minimal, because we really don't have much of an involvement. Supervisor Hemmingson wanted to select one of us others, and I will tell you emphatically, it wouldn't be me, and it would be excluding Supervisor Berkowitz. So what does that tell you about our Board of Supervisors? Are we working together for the common good of Delaware County? Are there real issues that need to be addressed here?
Supervisor Gitlin,
I'm
gonna stop
making
you
my
right
point.
there. No,
No,
this
no,
has
I'm
nothing
making
to
my
do
point. You're
with what
interrupting
we're
me.
I am interrupting you. I absolutely am interrupting you.
Okay,
We're talking about item 9. I'm going to keep
And
us
I am.
on track.
I am talking
To
about
approve
item
and
9.
appoint
I'm not
Supervisor
surprised
Voting
that you're interrupting
as
me,
a
because this
voting
is something you
delegate.
don't agree with.
So are you seconding
I will
Supervisor-
make the motion
No, what
to,
motion's
I will
been
make
made.
the
Would you like
motion.
to second it?
I will make the motion. Supervisor Berkowitz, I appreciate you withdrawing your motion. I will make the motion.
I will withdraw it.
I will make the motion to nominate Supervisor Berkowitz for the position of the voting delegate for this particular issue. And I'll ask for a second on that.
I'll second it.
He already voted.
Chairman asked for a second.
Yeah, so we already had a first. Are you seconding his motion?
I made the
He withdrew his
motion.
motion.
Supervisor Berkowitz withdrew his motion. I
Okay,
made the
So we're going
motion.
to just flip-flop. Instead of first and a second, it's going to be a first and a second. Not sure why we needed to do that. Okay, I have a first and a second. Any public comment on item number 9? Kylie, can you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Howard?
No.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
No.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. Okay, let's move on to public comment. We have a timed item of public comment. Is there any public comment at this time? Members of the public may address the board on matters which are within our jurisdiction. If you are addressing the board regarding the matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to hold your comments until the board takes up the matter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Do we have any public comment at this time? Seeing none, we're going to move on to item 17, which is an update on Green Diamond Properties and Timberlands. So, Jason, are you coming on up to... Thank you very much for being here, all three of you gentlemen. We appreciate it.
Is there a way to pull up the,
We could see it just fine from our side.
okay, very good. Thank you, Madam Chair and fellow supervisors, for the opportunity to provide an update on Green Diamond Resource Company. My name is Jason Carlson. I'm the new Vice President and General Manager of California Operations for Green Diamond Resource Company. My predecessor, Neil Ewald, was promoted, who many of you may know, was promoted up to Chief Operating Officer for Green Diamond and is now based out of our Seattle headquarters office. I took over from Neil at the beginning of 2019. So about Green Diamond, we are a 129-year-old family business. The company made its first entrance into California 72 years ago in the Klamath area. Today we have grown to manage 1.8 million acres in 9 states across the west coast of the U.S. and also the U.S. South. Our venture into the U.S. South is a new venture just in the last 2 years and provides a good platform for growth for our company. We have 2 certifications that we manage our timberlands under, sustainably manage our timberlands under, the SFI, Sustainable Forestry Initiative, and also the Forest Stewardship Council initiative, which is primarily here in just in California. Our ownership in California extends from the southern end of Humboldt County through an acquisition last year all the way up and across the border with Oregon. So it's a rather large footprint that we cover. The northern portion of our tree farm, which we call the Klamath Tree Farm, basically runs from the Bald Hills Road to the north. Joel Rink, who is our logging and roads superintendent and is here today, is our primary point of contact for the operations to the north. We have 180 employees in our division, and 19 of which directly support operations at the northern end of our tree farm. We are primarily use logging contractors to harvest timber out of this area, and we have about 180 contractors that support our operations. And of our timber ownership at the north end of our tree farm, approximately 87,000 acres are in Del Norte County. We use two primary harvesting methods for our timberlands, cable logging on steeper slopes and ground-based shovel logging on flatter slopes. We also do commercial thinning in our timberlands. At the age of around 35 years old, we'll go in and for more densely stocked stands, we'll do commercial thinning, bring out a merchantable log, and then open up the stand to allow additional growth and habitat to develop in that individual stand. We also use cut-to-length thinning as a tool for particularly dense stands at a younger age, go in, create openings in the forest or in the stand for additional growth and habitat to develop. And we pull out a smaller log, but still a merchantable log that we're able to sell to local mills. As part of our California operations, as I mentioned, we are certified under the Forest Stewardship Council certification. This certification was in response to market demand by lumber customers, and actually we believe contributes to the great story that is around redwood lumber and redwood logs. It makes us more competitive against alternative products such as cedar and also wood plastic composites in the marketplace. As part of our agreement for the Forest Stewardship Council certification, we agreed to retain additional mature timber on the landscape after we conduct our harvesting operations, and you can see it in the picture here. This creates habitat for wildlife and actually is a fairly significant amount of volume that we leave on the landscape today. We have two long-term federal permits that guide our operations. One is the Forest Habitat Plan, which was just pushed through this year with the federal government. It builds off of our earlier Northern Spotted Owl Habitat Conservation Plan. And then we also have a aquatic habitat conservation plan. Both of these allow us to have stability in our operations while managing our timberlands for sensitive species and protected and endangered species. A critical component of our aquatic HCP is how we manage roads. And one of the central objectives of our aquatic HCP is to reduce the impact of logging on the sensitive species and fishes in aquatic habitats for fish and various sensitive species in the waterways. We've done very active work to reduce the amount of sediment and therefore reducing the amount of impact that we're having on streams and aquatic habitat. One of our central methods that we use to understand our performance relative to these HCPs is the monitoring that we do. We're actively monitoring how we are doing against the obligations that we have under our habitat conservation plans. When we do measure, we validate our performance relative to those habitat conservation plans, but then if there are issues that develop from our monitoring and our validation of the data, we go ahead and make changes to our how we are operating and how we manage our business. We have, within our conservation planning department, we have 31 biologists, botanists, geologists, all that are helping us manage these habitat conservation plans so that we have certainty across the landscape that we are doing the right thing and living up to our obligations relative to those habitat conservation plans. All of these scientists and and employees are working to contribute to our science-based approach to managing wildlife and also our timber management. This slide shows the 4 species that are covered under our new forest habitat conservation plan. Of course, the northern spotted owl, which was present under our earlier habitat conservation plan. Then we've added the fisher and 2 tree voles as well. We have several other state permits that are used to guide our operations. These are agreements that we have with the state of California and DFW, and add to the complexity of our operations and how we manage our land. The next several slides are just really about some great projects that we've done across the landscape here. We've done some enhancement work for fisheries in Rowdy Creek, helped to enhance floodplains in McGarvey Creek in the lower Klamath River. We replace bridges and build bridges as needed. And then along major roadways, we also do visual treatments to enhance the view of the forest from the roadways. A couple years ago, we completed a multi-year, multi-step transaction with the Yurok tribe. This was basically the sale of 47,000 acres of green diamond timberland to the Yurok tribe. We believe that this was a successful transaction for all parties involved. It involved conservation groups as well, in addition to the Yurok tribe and also Green Diamond Resource Company. We have reached an agreement with the Yurok tribe to have a celebration this summer in the August timeframe for this transaction. It was a significant event, and we feel that it was something that should be honored and celebrated. And so as we have that date nailed down on the calendar, we will certainly let you all know so you can be a part of that. We would love to have you be a part of that. We are also actively engaged in the last chance grade realignment on 101. Craig Compton is our manager of land and business development, and he is our representative on the various working groups. We are actively looking to work with the group and find ways to mitigate the project. This certainly impacts us. It impacts the safety of traffic along 101, and we are happy to be engaged in the process and look forward to working with you, or continue to work with you on this issue. Lastly, I wanted to just point out here, as you can see, go down the years into 2018, we are becoming more and more active in the northern end of our tree farm. Last year we had 43.5 million board feet of production in Del Norte County alone. This is anticipated to remain at that level, or plus or minus that level for many years to come. And I think that is a good thing. It keeps us engaged in the community, keeps us providing logs to mills to the north and also to the south. And allows us to be a good contributor, I think, to this community. So if I leave you with anything here today, please know that we operate in a very complex environment in managing our timberlands. It is something that we're very good at, managing in that complexity. We take a science-based approach to timberland management and wildlife management. And we're excited to be members of the community in Del Norte County and look to be more actively engaged as we go forward. My contact information and Gary Reinerson's contact information is on the slides there. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me at any time for any questions, or if you'd like a tour or anything, please let me know, and love to participate in anything I can do to support Del Norte County. So at this time, I'll stop there and answer any questions if I can.
Thank you. Gentlemen, anybody have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I just have a short comment. Jason, thanks so much. I appreciate the information. You answered all the questions I was going to ask. So I think that's really great, and we look forward to keeping in touch on the Last Chance Grade project. So
Perfect. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Jason, thanks for the great presentation. I was kind of looking for you to address perhaps a biomass project that you might be looking at into the future. What do you do with your forest debris? Are you putting it up in the atmosphere? Or are you looking for vendors? Is there some money there?
We are actively looking for projects primarily around the Samoa Peninsula, to looking at pellet projects and things like that to draw material both from the mills and also from the forest residuals. It's a real challenge, frankly. We are able to do less and less burning of slash piles. And so this is a real issue that we are investigating, whether it's mobile chipping and maybe even converting of forest residuals out in the woods. But it's something that we're actively engaged on. We just have not reached a point where there's a market for it. And so we continue to do our best to foster that development of markets, but it's tough.
I'd like to refer you to the Hambros people who are actively looking for partners.
Okay.
There's money in this forest debris you're talking about, and that enhances our local economy, creation of jobs. And I know there's a project involved. I'm not at liberty to say with whom at this point, but I think I'll certainly do what I can to put you together with the people at Hambros, and perhaps you have some product and they have some service and equipment, and perhaps we can make something happen and benefit Delaware County economically.
That would be great.
Supervisor Howard?
Certainly, Jason, pleasure to finally meet you. Apologies for not making your welcoming party in Humboldt not too long ago, but we had a conflict at that same period of time. You know, a great indicator of whether or not Green Diamond's doing really well in this community is whether or not we see a white pickup truck with antennas driving through this town every day. And there's not a day that goes by where I don't see a Green Diamond white pickup truck represented on the road here in Delaware County. And brings back fond memories driving by down to Humboldt, the ORIC office there at Valley Green, bustling with activity. It makes me feel really good that you're still here. You guys play an active role in our community. More importantly, you play an active role in providing a timber yield tax that we sorely need here in Delaware County. So anything you need, please feel free to outreach anytime. And I know Craig knows how to get a hold of me. I interact with Gary pretty frequently at all the meetings in Sacramento, and he does a great job for you down there in Sac. So you guys keep up the good work. Look forward to seeing you around for many years to come.
Yes, thank you. It's always wonderful to hear good things about the things that we're doing in the community, and I apologize for not getting up here sooner. It's been a bit of a learning curve for me, but I'd look to be more engaged up here, and please, if you see opportunities where I should be engaged, please don't hesitate to contact me.
I just wanted to thank you for coming up and presenting, and you know, I like working with Craig on the stakeholders group. He's a good asset, a good part of that team, which is really important, and we appreciate everything you're doing for our community. So thank you, and coming and presenting, and let everybody else know exactly what you're doing. That's important.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Moving on to item 18. Provide the Community Development Department staff direction as to whether to submit a Title III application. Heidi, good morning.
Good morning. As part of the preparation of the fiscal year 19-20 budget, we have been asked, all department heads, elected officials, to look for funding for our departments. And one of the sources that I'm currently looking at is potentially the Title III funds for some of our planning functions for our single planner, our planner 1, 2, 3 position. Back in 2015, the board approved the authorization of $15,000 of our Title III funds for a resource planner. This was supposed to be a contribution to a wider effort to fund the position that Senator McGuire was helping us with. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. For the current fiscal year, we had allocated a resource planner position, but due to implications from the reorganization that we had this year, that was not able to be created. Therefore, we have not used the $15,000 allocation during any fiscal year. Currently, I am asking for direction to pursue an application for the purpose of helping with the planning budget for this fiscal year and potentially future fiscal years, if your board is interested in doing so. I've thrown out a figure of $15,000. It could potentially be more. One of the uses for the Title III funds is county planning, specifically planning that has to do with activities that interact with the forest. And we have a never-ending supply of activities that would qualify that our planner and/or planning staff myself could utilize that time. So I am seeking your feedback today, whether or not you're interested in an application coming later before you for that purpose.
Do we have a consensus or direction from the board? Is everybody in favor of that? Yes.
Yes.
Is there any public comment on item number 18? Great, seeing none, I believe you have directions to move forward.
Madam
Great.
Chair, could I ask Ms. Kunstler a question or two about the grant? So it's $15,000 per year for a 5-year period. So is it $75,000 over this 5-year period, as I'm reading the summary here?
Yes, that was my request, and that was likely what the application, how it would read.
So from 2015, tell me how you might see, share your vision with us, how you might see this money being allocated.
I would see it supplanting our payroll salaries and benefits for the planner position
Okay.
in response, and then in turn, we would be, allocating, which we already do, our time toward fire safe regulations and other activities that pertain to the forest.
So you're currently short of personnel. It's hard to replace people in Delaware County. We've spoken
Yes.
about this.
Yes.
Some morale issues here. Do you see this money possibly being used as a kind of a carrot? Can
No.
it be used to
No,
attract?
I see this as a way to help keep the planning budget for planning solvent for this fiscal year.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Heidi. Okay, moving on to item number 19. Approve the inclusion of a security alarm system as a fixed asset purchase in the amount of $10,000 within the road fund budget for fiscal year 18-19 as requested by the Director of Development Department. Welcome back. Heidi.
Hey, okay, unfortunately, I'm here making this request because we've had a number of break-ins at our roads division, and we are just plain tired of it. And the reason we're bringing it now rather than later, waiting for the adoption of the final 1920 budget, is we need to get this equipment installed as soon as possible. We have been working with the Information Technology Department, and they are getting us quotations from vendors for some fairly sophisticated systems that we think will be very helpful in protecting our private property at the roads division. And we feel that $10,000 should cover those costs. If you have any questions?
Any questions, gentlemen?
I do.
Supervisor Howard?
Sorry, having some. It's not cheaper just to put a barbed wire fence above the current chain link fence? And I mean, the security camera images potentially, and I'm not sure what the security system details. Maybe you could help me out with that briefly, but I'm just thinking you're going to continue to have break-ins, and with the hoodies and every other piece of gear that folks wear these days, it's kind of hard to identify and respond
perhaps maybe
sometimes.
the barbed wire in addition to, we already have security fencing around the property.
Right.
I mean, I believe it's our
That's easy to
experience that
crawl
they
over.
tend to cut the fencing and just, I mean, they find ways to circumvent it.
What are they going after?
Chainsaws, the weed eaters, they're going inside of our trucks, kind of going through, it's just really intrusive. And that's where they are now. I mean, fuel, we've had a variety of different things.
Sure.
It just seems like it's increased lately. In fact, I believe adjacent to our property, we have some
Cams.
guests, yeah.
Yep.
Or,
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We've had 12 break-ins in our restaurant in the last couple months, and it's just ongoing. And security cameras aren't catching them. You're not able to tell. And then I heard the police have found people with some of your property. They only have one piece, not all of it. So then they can't do anything
Yeah.
about it. And that's more the frustrating part for me, is our laws are stopping us from even going after the people once they do catch them. So.
Sure. I mean, what I've learned recently from some meetings that I've attended with Supervisor Gitlin is that when you need to harden your target. You need to, where you can, try to, make it harder for people to get into. And I think that's where we are, what we want to try to do. And at this point, we have funding available to do so. So we would like your support in allowing us to move forward.
Yes, and I'll make that motion, and this says it's an alarm system. It doesn't say it's a camera system, although I'm sure that's included, but the alarm part of it, I think, is a big portion of it, is to try to get their, get somebody's attention to go look at things. But I don't disagree that we shouldn't maybe put some razor wire over the top, although cutting, I can't tell you how many times my chain link fence has been cut. They just cut it, open it up, walk right through. I mean, they just make a doorway out of it, and they're just in and out. So I don't know that the razor wire is really a big deterrent either when they're going through the fence. But the alarm part of the system, I think, could be a real asset. As Supervisor Howard said, it's very difficult to determine who that individual is with the clothing that they wear when and they're very aware of cameras, so they keep their heads down and do all those things. I mean, it's just crazy what people do. But I will make the motion for that fixed asset purchase.
I'll go ahead and second that motion.
Thank you, Supervisors. So I have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on item number 19? Seeing none. Kylie, could you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. Item number 20, discuss and direct staff to write a letter of support to urge members of Congress to include the Secure Rural Schools Extension in the fiscal year 19 omnibus appropriations bill and authorize the chair to sign it as requested by Supervisor Howard.
Move to approve.
Motion and a second. Any public comment on item 20? Kylie?
Quickly,
Oh, sorry.
Madam Chair,
Talk about
just quickly. We do need to reference, as Supervisor Berkowitz brought forward, the Forest Management for Rural Stabilities Act, which this reauthorization is geared towards. The Senate bill number has changed many times in the emails that I've received, so I'm not currently tracking on what number it is, whether it's 3654 or 1643 or 3753. I'm having a tough time just wrestling with that. I know CEO Serena has reached out to Greg Burns to try to get some confirmation on that, and I'm assuming that 3654 is as close as we're going to get at this point in time. But
Yes, there are several bills moving forward.
Yep.
One, of course, is the 2-year reauthorization. Another one gives a long-term view of the secure rural schools, which is also moving. And then there's a House bill that's also moving. So we'll want to probably support all of those bills when they come up.
Thank you, Supervisor. Okay, anything else? Kylie?
yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. Okay, moving on to item 21, review the current 18-19 fiscal year budget priorities and obligations and give direction to staff as to any new or reprioritized positions or services for the 19-20 fiscal year as requested by CAO Serena. Mr. Serena.
So in the report that I presented to the board is very similar to last year's and the prior years. We are in the process of preparing the recommended budget, which is the interim spending plan. What you see or what you will see in the recommended will reflect the same priorities as the 18-19 budget, as well as the three budget directives that the board agreed upon last year regarding some funding for the sister city travel, for the median commitment, as well as a commitment for the sanitation units on South Beach. Presently, we've gone through the first round of meetings. We've started the second rounds of meetings. As you heard from the Community Development Director, we are making some requests to the departments and looking at what might be a plan for reducing the budgets further than they are right now, in the sense of anticipating that we will be getting a fund balance coming forward in August, but we're planning early to see what that might look like and then reduce from there. Not knowing the fund balance at this point, we know that the 3.8 will be reduced considerably, and then we'll go on the final push similar to last year. So I placed this on a little bit earlier than we did last year in order to assist the budget team as we go forward, and also to address anything that the board may have that's additional to last year. And this gives the opportunity to the board, the first opportunity, to discuss it. If there are no changes to last year's priorities, we will continue on into the recommended budget, which is the second opportunity for the board. And then, of course, there is the third opportunity, which is the final budget hearing. So at this point, you know, the budget condition is very similar to last year. And the difference is that we did have a fairly significant one-time back payment last year that assisted considerably, and we don't have that this year. There are some opportunities that we will look at in regards to savings within our insurance funds, and all of that will be compiled into the recommended or final budget. So that's the situation we're in right now, and the request is for the board to consider those and give any feedback to the budget team.
Appreciate that. Gentlemen, feedback, questions, concerns?
Jay, I continue to have a great deal of concern about the county's inability to hire appropriate staff when a vacancy occurs. I think it creates a morale problem because the work has to be done. And when you don't have it, it falls on the employees that are there. How can we address some kind of a contingency fund, a bonus fund, something like that to incentivize rehiring people who have left these key jobs, and then the responsibility goes on to the other employees? How would you suggest we address that?
Well, through collective bargaining is one of those. The board gets an opportunity to give input anytime we have an open agreement, and we've done that. You'll be seeing another agreement coming forward. I don't believe you can address that as easily as a contingency fund for an individual position, because each position is different. We fill positions constantly. I mean, we have 450 employees, so we have turnover similar to any other business. If you're specifically looking at something like the community development director, which includes an engineering position, that's an issue not just for Del Norte County, but many different jurisdictions. Just had an example of that sent to me yesterday. Many of our positions, we have multiple candidates, and we fill those within typically a 30-day period to a 60-day period, depending on what level of position it is. The board tends to see those positions that are under the board directly. The appointed department heads come forward, and you know that you get multiple applicants. The ones that we have had difficulties with tend to be those that are licensed, and it's not unique to Del Norte County. But you have to work with what you also have financially, and you have collective bargaining agreements, and you have to work within those. So as we go through those, you know, as the board has seen over the last couple of years, we have brought positions forward very specifically with new job descriptions that address changes in responsibilities, but also with corresponding salary increases. In the case, and I'll go back to the CDD director one because it's been the most, or assistant director, I'm sorry. It's been the most difficult to fill. because of the county engineer position, it would likely require you to pay that position higher than the director of the department because of the difficulty of finding experienced civil engineers to come and fill these positions. It's a very difficult one, and it has been. We haven't been able to find a solution for that one. We've tried a couple of different situations. We've raised the salary at least twice. We've changed the job description to allow it to be an assistant as well as the county engineer, and we have very limited candidates with the experience of a county engineer. But if you have other examples of positions that haven't been filled, I'd be willing to take those and then come back with any information you might need.
Thank you. Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yeah, as I've said since 2007, the fully funded position to address resource-related issues is still a high priority of mine, and I would like to see it moved up the list at least to the number 6 position. As Supervisor Howard can attest, he and I seem to be, I guess, affected more because we have a huge interest in that, and with the fishing the fishing issues, the wolf issue, the other natural resource issues that come up continually, I'd like to see that moved up. Other than that, it's pretty sad, but it's the best it is.
Well, to give the board an idea, we are a service-related industry, so over 60% of our budget typically goes to salaries and benefits for the people that provide those services, and they're vital to what we do. And we have gone through the process with our largest bargaining unit and got into a 3-year agreement with them. I'm anticipating that our mid-management unit will be coming forward here real soon with an agreement. Those are positives in that we did come to an agreement. But the nature of the beast of budgeting in Delmarva County, and this board has seen it for many years, and I don't see it changing anytime soon, is the state of California often dictates how we spend our money. And we are paying a considerable amount of money annually increase for the unfunded liability for the state of California, as well as, we have our own obligations to our employees. So it is very frustrating. It's frustrating that you hope that you could get to a point of having a lot more flexibility within your budget. But again, I've whined about this in the past, and I'll whine about it in the future, and we will do our best to get a balanced budget that hits these priorities and also provides the best service we can provide with the funding we have.
So Jerry, your number 8, you'd like to see up to 6. I'm looking at 6, and I'm hoping with the money coming in for roads, that maybe number 6 as it sits now isn't, not that it isn't a, no, what?
That's not county
Funded, no, general, so wouldn't even, okay. Wouldn't even matter, sorry.
No, and Madam Chair, I don't see things getting any more rosy anytime soon. I'm very pessimistic looking forward at the situation within rural counties in the state. I continue to see grabs by Gavin Newsom, and not looking forward to the impacts it'll have not only on our Health and Human Services Department, but some of the things that we enjoy from Health and Human Services that transfer to our general fund and help support that, including the 70+% that we put towards public safety within that general fund budget. Obviously, each of the supervisors here has great things that they would like to see that general fund budget go towards, and Jerry's mentioned one of those. That's been a long outstanding issue here for our staff to pay attention to. It'll continue to be an important thing for us to address. But, looking forward in the future, and I'd love to hear a report from the auditor controller at some point in the near future is we've obviously seen an increase in TOT revenues here in the past decade plus with the marketing that has been active here in this community. We've seen an election that proved additional dollars, 2% to be specific, increase from 8 to 10% in our TOT revenues on county businesses that would roll directly into the harbor, but there's still an 8% that rolls into Del Norte County's general fund. I'd love to hear a report from the auditor, maybe when time allows, on what we've seen over the past decade, something a little bit more tangible, what we've seen as far as revenues over the past decade, to see if there's more that we could do to invest in the next new visitor to our community. Because it seems that even though we are capturing a great deal more of the effects of that travel and tourism industry here in Del Norte County, that we could definitely push our shoulder seasons out more considerably to help fill the vacant beds in that period from essentially August 1 or October 1 through March 31 of any given year. And with effective marketing, I think we could do that. Not sure exactly where that takes us, but I would like to see that review, because that, to me, in looking forward, outside of sales, outside of gas, outside of property taxes, our only real avenue on revenue generation. If folks like Green Diamond and the presentation we heard today from Jason just stays at a stable level. So
Likely that report would be a revenue report that might be run by the auditor, but it's the treasurer tax collector would be the lead on that one. I'll talk with Barbara about it. We can present that as part of the recommended budget.
thank you.
Supervisor Berkowitz.
You know, we spent an entire meeting last year going over all of these items, and especially putting them in some kind of an order where all of the supervisors could agree of where they stood. And so rather than just take these piecemeal, I would like to put them exactly where they are, all right, 1 through 8. And then at a future meeting, maybe we can take and reprioritize them. But for the moment, I'd like to keep them where they are.
Anything else? Do we have any public comment? Nobody wants to chime in on item 21. Okay. Jay, do you feel you have adequate direction to move forward?
Well, we have 2 supervisors who have given their opinion or request. So for directions purposes, if we're moving one from 8 to 6 or we're leaving them in one place, I think you would want to take a vote in order to give me that direction, because we do have 2 requests before the board.
Are you asking for yours to be moved?
I am.
You are, okay. So do you want to make a motion to that effect?
I would make that motion.
So you want to take item number 8 and move it up above?
I would make the motion to move item number 8 on the priority list up to number 6.
I'd second that motion.
A motion and a second on that, Kylie. Do I have another motion? Do you want to make the other? No, I need to have another motion if you want to take it.
I'd like to make a motion that we keep the priorities as they are until a future time when we can discuss all of these in detail.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, I have 2 motions and 2 seconds. Kylie, can you take up the second motion first?
This is the motion to keep it as it is.
Correct.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
No.
Supervisor Howard?
No.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
No.
Okay, and this is the first motion from Supervisor Hemmingson to move number 8 up to number 6. Supervisor Gitlin?
No.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
No.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. Now, Jade, you have clearer direction than
Yes.
before. Okay, thank you. Okay, with that all done and no more input?
Well-
Well,
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Normally during the legislative budget issues, we've got this piece up top that says, consider miscellaneous legislative and budget matters pertinent to the county. Del Norte authorized the chair to sign and send appropriate letters with respect to matters pending before the state and federal governments. That's kind of a catch-all that we have in there for items that sometimes aren't agendized and allows us to have some latitude in discussion. And I want to bring back a point that I didn't feel was appropriate during the discussion on the consent agenda that was pulled by Supervisor Hemmingson specific to the NACO piece. But I want to bring back a fine line for discussion, and when we do support a voting rule, whether it's myself on CSAC, whether it's Jerry on RCRC, whether it would be Bob now on NACO, is that it's a fine line because I generally feel, and maybe Supervisor Berkowitz and Supervisor Hemmingson could comment on this, but I try not to take a position on something that the board has not taken a position on. And why I bring this forward is because we never discussed issues around the national monuments here with this board. We didn't discuss anything around the Endangered Species Act or conservation type easements and public funds transferring forward. Not to say that this board wouldn't be supportive of those kind of things, but generally we try to, when we advocate for something, follow our policies and those action items in our goals review that we set forward annually. And so I want to have a little bit more clear discussion of that, so we know when I'm at CSAC, Supervisor Hemmingson's at RCRC, Supervisor Berkowitz is at NACO, that they're supporting a board decision that we've all agreed upon. And so that was kind of my concern. I didn't feel it was appropriate in the consent agenda item discussion, but since it is legislative issues that were supported by Supervisor Berkowitz, I thought I'd bring that forward.
all right, no, it's a good
I'm just
comment.
wondering, is this a request to put something on the next agenda or a request to discuss something now?
Sorry. It's not a request to discuss something now, even though I believe based under this catch-all, it can be. But I would love, but you're shaking your head no.
No, it's not a catch-all. In the past, we didn't have numbers underneath it just because of the software. And since then, that's been corrected. And so it's a heading to number 19, 20, and 21. But usually, if there's something somebody wants to put on that is a legislative item, now would be the appropriate time to add it to the next agenda.
Well, this is not necessarily a legislative item, Liz. It's a point of order in determining board support on particular legislative items at a congressional level, per se, or at a state level. So, taking a position. And obviously, it can't be addressed here, so I would request that we have some form of discussion at a future board meeting.
And I understand where he's coming from. We just want to make sure everybody's clear on their job duties if they are taking that seat. Right?
So we will be bringing forward an updated legislative platform, and that's probably the best time to have that discussion, because there's a lot of generalized policies of the board that you could address at both federal and state level, and that gives the board exactly what you're asking for, basically a foundation to go forward and advocate. And then as new issues come up, we bring them to the board, and then those are set in policy by the board.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm going. I think that type of platform for our legislative advocacy should time to time be reviewed. It sounds like it's coming forward. I just want to make sure our bases are covered, because as supervisors, we have a lot of latitude on what we could cover, and I want to make sure those liberties that we do take are covered by those policies.
I think one of the problems that we face is that there will be issues that will come up that at NACO or CSAC or any of these others that the board has not discussed, and yet they will want to vote on these things. And my thing always has been on those issues that you can see, where they're saying the county should be involved. Those are the kinds of things that I'm looking to support, because those are kinds of things that directly affect us. So I'm not going to take a position that would be in direct opposite of anything that the board here has always advocated for. For example, more county involvement in national issues. And so that's what maybe we need to discuss that at the next board meeting, because we're going to have.
Well, that's what he's saying. So we'll
Yeah.
bring it up and we'll talk about it and what.
Exactly.
It's just so all three of you know that you're not advocating for something that this board hasn't discussed and taken a position on.
Correct.
And if we haven't, then you need to back away from it.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. See everybody on June 25th. Thank you.